The X-Men 97 trailer has officially hit the internet, and I won't even lie, I don't even have jokes for any of you individuals that were looking forward to this and then had your hopes and dreams crushed before your very eyes because, oh yeah, they've did it to the MCU, they've done it to Star Wars, they've done it to Star Trek, they've done it to Doctor Who. Why did you think for a moment that the X-Men would escape unsullied? Like what was it in your head that you had that made you think, yeah, I know that we've seen agenda and propaganda in everything lately, but I really do trust that Disney's gonna say, you know what, let's pump the brakes on the activism just for X-Men so we can really give the people what they want. Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idol, and yes, if you have been following the internet, you know what a scene Morph has made on the comic book community right now. Let's go ahead and talk about this. Before we do, hit that subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day, and with free speech faltering in the nerd sphere, we gotta do what we can. We gotta support my channel and channels like mine that are out there to try and get the truth to you without any of the BS propaganda. We got X-Men updates here. If Morph being non-binary makes you angry, you clearly don't know what X-Men stand for. Now, it's funny you say that. Morph being non-binary. They go on, and this is actually a quote tweet from their earlier tweet, Morph's characterization in X-Men 97. This is a lighter take on the character who is non-binary and has an interesting buddy relationship with Wolverine. Now, hold on. I don't know why a non-binary individual would have a buddy relationship with Wolverine. Wolverine's not a minor. The character's past with Mr. Sinister, the show's villain, could also come into play. Now, non-binary. We all know what non-binary, actually, I think the vast majority of us don't know what non-binary means. They keep coming up with new terms every day that don't make a lick of sense, but for those of us that think we know what non-binary means, the show's called X-Men 97. Alright, fair enough. The first time non-binary was used. Huh. The earliest use of the terms referring directly to non-binary seems to be around 2000. For example, Haynes and McKenna's 2001 collection, Unseen Genders Beyond the Binaries. 2001. Well, that's interesting because last I checked, 97 was before 2001. Non-binary wouldn't have even existed yet. Now, I know. Your boy Leon's not just here to throw all the anti-woke, oh, look at all this wokeness, look at all the gay stuff and the homos and the rainbow parade going on in X-Men. Like, don't get me wrong, there's gonna be plenty of that. This is absolutely fucking retarded. However, I also understand that while there are people who want to claim the inane, claims that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were, directly inspiring the X-Men and vice versa, you've got people that claim, no, they absolutely were not. The X-Men has never stood for that stuff. The truth is somewhere in the middle. No, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were not inspirations to the characters in the X-Men, to Magneto, Professor X at all. That was never a thing. However, it is true that, like, in the 80s, the late 70s, into the 80s and onward, there were starting to become more allegorical stories in the X-Men, and that really got, those were done by Chris Claremont, by the way, not Stan Lee. For anyone that wants to talk about how Stan Lee was just such this proponent of, oh, let's make sure all the bigotry is flushed out. Nah, that started with the Chris Claremont run, but I don't expect these activists to even know who Chris Claremont is, because they're not real nerds, so that's neither here nor there. The point is, we'll get into some of that stuff in a moment, but first, let's take a look at these comments here, because the comments, they are pretty fantastic. Let's start with this one by, let's see, we got Scratch Point. I didn't know they stand for mental illness. You really do learn something new every day. Go X-Team. Well, what about this post from him? The X-Men have and always will be symbols for inclusion and diversity. If you're a bigot and have a problem with that, you're not an X-Men fan, and you don't understand the slightest thing about them. Very self-important of them to decide arbitrarily who is and isn't X-Men fans. But let's see what else they got to say. While we usually don't comment on people's opinions, the amount of ignorant bigotry and hate comments that we've spewed from the Morph being non-binary in the series, we'll be blocking those that can't be respectful. No one is forcing you to follow us or watch the show. And that is true. No one is forcing you to watch the show. However, this is the internet. If you're gonna exist on the internet, you better be ready for some pushback, especially with some ultimate dumbassery, like turning a fan favorite character non-binary in 1997 when none of this shit existed in 1997. And we got my boy Lofty Pixels here. Now Lofty, I know a lot of people know him for some some awful takes. I disagree. I think Lofty got solid takes 9 out of 10 times. He says the X-Men represent ostracized communities. That does not mean the X-Men themselves have to now suddenly be extra super marginalized. They are already mutants. Modern day non-binary gender identity inclusivity is redundant pandering. Facts! Straight facts. And he's right. The X-Men do represent ostracized communities. There was nothing more ostracizing than being a flat-out mutant. Again, at least later on in the Claremont runs and onwards. That didn't exist in the Stan Lee run, but we'll get to that in a little bit as well. Fun fact, Magneto's Holocaust backstory, that didn't even get written until like 78, even though Magneto himself as a character was written in 69, I think, 67, somewhere along there. Point is, it took a while for Magneto's, Holocaust backstory to even get put to paper. So, we got Master of the TDS. Maybe you don't like that the majority of people don't agree with you, and that makes you feel uncomfortable about yourself. Nice attempt at projection, though. Couldn't agree more. And for those of you that want to talk about how, Stan Lee absolutely said that there was, the Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, they were there, they were the symbols, they were the inspiration. Here's what Stan Lee has to say about his time coming up with the X-Men.
We didn't really talk that much about X-Men and how that came.
Oh, the X-Men, how I did that. All right, well, there's a funny, everything is a funny story. Sure. After I had done the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, Spider-Man, I think the X-Men came next. The X-Men and one other, I think Daredevil, they're about the same time. Anyway, I wanted to do another group of superheroes. But I was getting tired now of figuring out how they get their superpowers. I couldn't have everybody bitten by a radioactive spider or exposed to a gamma ray explosion. And I took the cowardly way out. I said to myself, why don't I just say they're mutants? They were born that way. We all know there are mutants in real life. There's a frog with 5 legs, things like that. So I won't have to think of new excuses. I'll get as many as I want, and yeah, he's a mutant, that's all.
He's a mutant, that's all. It really is that simple. So Stan Lee, he went to the Akira Toriyama school of coming up with stuff. Hey, how do we do Super Saiyan? Well, I don't know. It's taken a long time to color in all this black hair. Let's invent Super Saiyan purely as a time saver. We don't have to color in the hair. It will say he's blonde. It's a power-up. Boom. It saves so much time not coloring in all that black. Like, that's literally, Stan Lee did his own version of that. And if you want further information on it, here's somebody outright asking him at a panel about the allegory in the X-Men. Listen to what Stanley Boy has to say.
Where did you get the idea for the X-Men, and did you originally create them to destroy racial prejudice?
I didn't create them to destroy racial prejudice, but once I had them going, it occurred to me, man, this strip makes a great vehicle to talk about racial prejudice and how terrible it is. But in the beginning, all I wanted to get a new team of heroes.
Well, that should put that to rest, but of course, the vast majority of folks, they're not gonna read this, they're not gonna watch this video, they're not gonna care. All they're gonna see is, oh, this is an angry, anti-homophobic rant about the X-Men. I'm not gonna watch up to this point, so it's up to you individuals who've made it this far to educate others. It's not like Stan Lee was a bad dude, it's not like Stan Lee was a raging racist or nothing, but let's be real, he didn't create the X-Men to fight racism, and Stan Lee and Magneto certainly were not based on Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. So when you go to Twitter and you type in X-Men, because this has been a controversy all day, understandably so, because when you take a character that was made in the 90s, that was popularized in the 90s, and then to make a sequel series that also takes place in the 90s, to bring in the nostalgic crowd of the people that grew up watching that show, again, in the 90s, when none of this bullshit existed, yeah, you're gonna have some fans that were around that age at the time, like your boy here, and like so many others on X, throwing a bit of a fit. Also, I do want to throw out there, while I do like X-Men, while I'm an X-Men fan, I'm not a massive X-Men fan. I'm not like Cult Classic Cage. Like, I was a Marvel fan reading comics, but there were other characters I enjoyed a lot more. Spider-Man I enjoyed a lot. Daredevil, I was a massive Daredevil fan. I loved reading the Blade comics. Ghost Rider I was big on. That said, one of my top 5 favorite Marvel characters of all time is an X-Men character. Iceman. And you want to know when I stopped reading the Iceman, or when I stopped reading the X-Men comics? Relatively recently, within the past 7 years or so, when they fucked over Iceman's character as well by making him gay out of nowhere because more representation. When the writer outright said, yeah, I'm not an X-Men fan, I didn't read the comics, they just did what they wanted to do. Needless to say, the X-Men's been getting shafted for years now in the books. Why didn't you think this was going to happen with a new show? But let's see what other individuals have to say about this. We got Emo 10th Doctor here. The X-Men fight giant robots and aliens, not bigotry. It's a shame they've been adopted by idiot leftists who think the only X-Men story that exists is God loves, man kills, which is a shit comic, by the way. I would disagree. God loves, man kills is not a shit comic. However, because of what it spawned, all these individuals that are making these asinine claims about the bigotry and the X-Men have always stood for fighting against this stuff when God Loves, Man Kills didn't come about till the late 80s, I believe, maybe early 90s. Yeah, that comic run is to blame for a lot of what we view the X-Men as now. I don't give a shit about they don't give a shit about the characters at all. My message to you posers, he's got Wolverine flipping him off, and he's responding to that X-Men updates. We got this right here. X-Men 97 First Look via Empire Magazine is straight up homage to the characters in animated series. Now this is a shill account. Power of X-Men. They're gonna like anything you slap the X-Men on. I'm gonna be real. What is this? Because this is great. This looks like trash. Like these character designs here. Maybe I don't know if it's the animation. I don't know if it's CGI or what. But this just looks awful. This looks like like that old Spider-Man PS2 Web of Shadows game or whatever. It looks all odd, and I like cell shading. But dude, even better, it looks like the Spider-Man 2003 MTV show where Spider-Man was played by Neil Patrick Harris, if you guys remember that. But what about this? From Learning the Law, original Storm X-Men 97 X-Men had such beautiful hair. I remember the first time seeing it and being captivated by her look. Now everyone has lawnmower haircuts. Look at this. That is so damn lame in comparison to the gorgeous goddess that Storm was originally. But that's what they're doing. They don't care about you. They don't care about your childhood. They don't care about what they're ruining. All they care about is putting in their own propaganda and message with a complete and utter bias, destroying the source material because, hey, we're Disney. We can do what we want. We know better. This isn't being made for you, the fans. We're calling it X-Men 97 because, let's be real, that's going to shoot up our Disney Plus subscriber numbers, and it's going to cause people to watch it, and the watch hours are going to be through the roof, but no one's going to have a positive word to say about it. This isn't going to be looked back on in 10, 15, 20 years with anything near the original love for the original series. This isn't going to be the next Samurai Jack or insert any other popular show from the late 90s into the early 2000s that is, still popular in the public zeitgeist nowadays, that is still remembered fondly. This is going to go by the wayside like everything else because it's going to be filled with, of the time, it's going to be filled with agenda pandering propaganda full of non-binary LGBT, probably some Black Lives Matter, all this hocus pocus bogus that no one cares about is going to instantly date it. That when people try and go back to watch it in 10 or 15 years, they're going to be like, oh, remember that time in movie and TV history when comic book movies and the medium was just oversaturated and destroyed by this message and propaganda? That's what's going to happen with this show. And anyone that had a hope that wouldn't be the case, I don't know how you got to that point. I don't know how you had such faith after seeing what Disney has done year over year over year. If She-Hulk wasn't enough to tip you off to what was going on with this, I don't know what would have been. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at Bolt the Word. And please do subscribe. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. Not always about comic book stuff or Disney or the X-Men, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon. And by the way, become a member for $4.99 a month. You can join the Discord, choose the articles that I go over. It's great. I also have merch. Use discount code VitalIdol. Get a shirt or a mug. It'll be a great time. And remember, it's all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.